Thompson?
Here.
Festerson?
Here.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Mulligan? Stothard?
Present.
Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation by Council Member Chris Jerem.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to give thanks today, this week of Thanksgiving, to our city council staff, the efforts that they put in day after day to make our jobs easier, to our city clerk and his staff, for the help that they give us in our lives and care for the citizens.
City Clerk certifies publication in the Daily Record on November 19th, notice for a pre-council and regular City Council meeting November 23rd, 2010. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
If you have a cell phone or a pager, we ask that you turn it off or to vibrate. Mr. Clerk, first item.
Pursuant to City Council Rule 7E, agenda item number 5 should be laid over 2 weeks for publication and public hearing. Item number 6 is resolution of the preliminary plat entitled Pacific Street West Replat 7, located southwest of South HWS Cleveland Boulevard and Blue Sage Parkway, along with attached conditions. Hereby accepted and preparation of the final plat is hereby authorized. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on item number 6 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. My name is Jeff Elliott with E&A Consulting Group, here to represent the applicant. We are here to ask for your approval of the preliminary plat for Pacific Street West Replat 7, which is a replatting of Lot 79 in that subdivision, which is roughly a 14-acre parcel of land, currently zoned R6. We're proposing to divide into 23 single-family lots and 1 7-acre lot to remain at R6. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask for your approval.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Approval.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
It's adopted 7-0. Item number 7, resolution of special use permit application to allow a daycare general in an R5 urban family residential district located at 2440 Spalding Street is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on item number 7 begins now. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
It's adopted 7-0. Item number 8, resolution of special use permit application to allow daycare general in an R435 single-family residential district, high density, located at 3020 South 44th Street is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
A public hearing on item number 8 begins now. Are there any proponents?
My name is Xiomara Cruz. I live at 3020 South 44th Street, Omaha, Nebraska 68105. And I was here last month to request an in-home daycare too. And you already approved, but I didn't hear that you said that we'll be operating 12 hours. So I am here to say that I want my daycare as the same as that I already have it. It's 24 hours and 7 days a week. And I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
She is, just for your information, are you asking for 24 hours? She's asking for 24. This says 12 hours, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Cruz, would you come back, please? Just restate your name for the record.
Xiomara.
Have you been contacted by any of your neighbors regarding any concerns that they may have about residents that live around your neighborhood or around your daycare?
Yes, they just called me to say good luck, and they are happy to me, and they don't have any complaints right now. So I don't think that the 2 more spots that I am asking will bother my neighbors.
Okay, that's all that I have. Mr. Mulligan?
Who's here from the planning department?
Chad Weaver, City Planning.
Chad, with the planning department, would you have a problem with this being changed to a 24-hour operation?
Yes, we were actually aware of the request, and it's our policy to limit the hours when they increase the number of kids that they have. This would be in sticking with our policy, the 12 hours. We are in the process of evaluating changes to the code and the policy on numbers of kids and hours of operation and so forth, but it would be premature for us to change our policy at this time.
Okay, so you are not in favor of the 24-hour operation, is that correct?
Yes, our recommendation was 12 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jerem?
Yeah, I would just point out that the neighborhood where this lady lives and operates this business has packing plants that are not too far, and it's a 24-hour working community, and I'm sure that people work the second shifts and third shifts that rely on this sort of daycare for assistance, so I would support it and ask my colleagues to as well.
And I would maintain my second. I agree because of the neighborhood.
Mr. Thompson?
Hi.
Hi.
When does the adults in the house sleep if you're going to be doing 3 shifts?
I have my whole basement for the daycare.
Okay, and so you have rotating shifts in which some adults are up and some are sleeping?
I want my daycare for 24 hours, but I just want to have 3 or 4 kids at night. So I don't want to operate like 12 kids in the morning and 12 kids at night. Just I want to have 24 hours because I already have 4 kids that they stay at home until night.
When do they leave?
They leave at 9 p.m.
9 p.m.?
Yes, that's why I cannot have just 12 hours because their mom sometimes works 16 hours, and so the license one right now is 24 hours and 7 days. That's why I want.
So
to
you're
change.
really operating the first shift and the second shift?
Yes.
You're not operating the third shift?
No, not third shift. No.
Would you be okay with a 16-hour instead of 24-hour?
Yes, that will be work. Yeah.
My suggestion is that my colleagues limit the 24 to 16, but I'll listen to see what they say.
I can go on. I'll second that.
So, Mr. Clerk, can we,
Let's put this-
can we
if this is
straighten
a
this out
friendly
legally?
amendment, what hours do we want her to, what hours do you operate?
Right now I just operate from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Is that 16 hours out?
Yeah, 2 shifts.
I know, whatever your motion you want, if you want, do we want to go 5 a.m. to 9
We have to
p.m.?
withdraw the first motion to go
Yeah,
with the second.
okay. He's withdrawing his first motion to 24 and make it 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's the amendment.
5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
No, I don't want that.
5 a.m.
5 a.m. to 9
5 a.m., but I don't want to 9 p.m. I have 4 kids that they stay until 9 p.m., but I don't want to have until 9 because, you know, if they gonna stay more time, I cannot just limit it to say 9. So I don't know if you guys can give me the opportunity to have the daycare from 5 a.m. to midnight.
I'm really concerned that the quality of the care that the kids would receive, that you need to get some rest, some sleep, and some downtime.
Mm-hmm.
If not, those kids aren't going to get good care.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just throwing that out there and see where my colleagues are.
Thank you. Mr. Festerson?
Thanks, Mr. President. A question for Planning Department. We, when you talk about the 12-hour restriction right now, what's the basis for that? Is there, just the Planning Department's policy? Is there some other state requirements you based that on? Give us some background on why it's 12 hours right now.
Chad Weaver, Planning Department. It's essentially policy based on these being in a neighborhood type of situations. Obviously, all neighborhoods are not created equal. But initially, at least, it was an effort to try to limit them from 24-hour traffic, essentially.
It's more of a traffic issue from your perspective. There's no other, child care requirement. You consider that's more of a state function, isn't it?
No, yeah, we weren't evaluating the quality of the care. We leave that to the state.
Okay. And then when you talk about altering the 12-hour situation, is it for situations like this that might be of practical concern when there's various business shifts going on with parents and it might not conform to a 12-hour session, or what's your thoughts on revamping the current policy?
This has certainly been one of the issues that has caused us to relook. There are some others in relation to how the building code and the state code work in relation to ours. We're trying to get them to cooperate a little more clearly, I guess you could say, but this issue is one of those that we're considering in terms of the demand for off-peak hour child care.
Okay, so this might be an example of why you're reconsidering doing that?
Yes.
And so in that respect, you haven't made a determination yet, but 12 versus 18 versus 24 isn't. Do you have any opinions about that?
Well, I would say that probably we will be expanding the hours somewhat. To say to what degree, I think would be premature.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
What's on the floor right now?
Well, we're not sure. I'm not sure what.
Make a motion.
Okay.
I'll withdraw my motion. I'll withdraw a second. I would make a motion to 5 a.m. Second.
5 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Fester. Mrs. Stothert?
Ms. Cruz, I wanted to ask you, I'm a little confused at what you think your needs are. You usually start at 5 a.m., right? Is that when your first kids come?
Yes.
And what are you approved to have during the daytime? How many kids do you usually have?
Right now I have 9.
You have 9? But what you're saying is some of them come in later on in the day and their parents work night, and so you need the ability to let them spend the night.
Mm-hmm.
And approximately how many spend the night?
4 kids.
It's just 4?
Yes.
Okay. Routinely spend the night?
Yes.
And so you have a bedtime and you put them to bed, basically,
yes.
So they sleep there.
Mm-hmm.
So would an 11 o'clock ending time work for you? Because some of these kids, you're saying their parents are working all night and they need a place to sleep.
That's what I was asking for, 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cutting that off at 11 o'clock, that's not going to help this
Not
evening
much.
night situation of the kids that need to spend the night.
yes.
So you're saying in what your situation is, you really need the 24 hour.
Yes, I do.
And you don't think that cutting it off at 11 is going to help then for those?
It's not gonna help, but if you just give me limited to 11, so I have to talk to the parents and say that that's the last hour that I can operate the daycare.
But these are parents that usually work the night shift, aren't they?
Yes.
And what do you usually, do you have like a standard bedtime? You put them to bed at 10 o'clock and then they're asleep?
No,
Or do they come in at 11 o'clock for their parents to work a midnight shift?
No, the 4 kids that I have came to my house at 6:30 a.m.
Okay.
And they left sometimes at 9 or sometimes at 10. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't, her mom doesn't have she has a flexible schedule.
Sure.
So that's why.
So that would work.
Yes.
But then you have these other 4 that their parents work nights and you need them to spend the night. is
Oh,
what you're
no.
saying.
I don't have kids at night right now. Just the 4 kids that I have now, they came at 6:30 and they left sometimes at 9 or 10.
Okay.
So I don't have any kids for just second shift. I don't have any kids for second shift right now. Just these kids stay 16 hours at home. So that's why I want to operate 24 hours, but that is just in case that if I have kids.
I know.
You understand?
Well,
I don't want to have 12 kids in the morning, 12 kids at night, and 12 kids. No, I just want to have my license like 24 hours and 7 days a week.
Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm just trying to get. Do you have children now that spend the night?
Yes, they spend
all night long.
No, all night, just until 9 or 10 p.m. No, all night. Yes.
So if we cut this off at 11 p.m., like Councilman Jerem suggested, that would be okay and work for you?
Not really.
She wants to expand.
I want to have
You just
my
want to be
license.
able to offer these
Yes.
kids to spend the night, for you to put them to bed and to spend the night,
Yes, if
need to.
yes, if you cannot give me the opportunity to have 24 hours and 7 days a week, I wanna keep my license like that.
Let's just see how.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Festerson?
My last question was, does the special use permit, Mr. Weaver, have a designation about how many maximum kids can be there at one time?
Yes.
Chad Weaver, Planning Department. Yes, I believe the request here is for 12, and that is the single time maximum. You could have more kids than that over the course of the day or the week, but at one time would be 12.
Okay. And our main purview by way of special use permit via the Planning Department is the neighborhood impact and traffic concerns, correct?
Yes.
So in that respect, I think if it's only 12 kids, I think I'm okay with this exception too, while we analyze that policy.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Yes, I'm willing to support Councilman Jerem's floor amendment here, and I think let's not set a precedent that later on we'll be sorry that we did that. I don't think we're ready to look at 24 hours right now, but we could perhaps revisit it at another point in time. So let's take this first step, and then after this first step, we'll give Mr. Weaver a chance to do his study as to what the changes are going to be. And then maybe in the future you can come back to us again. But we're willing to increase to 12 hours, and it looks like it's 18 hours now or something like that. But why don't you just take this first step and then see how that works and give us a chance to do more study.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Mulligan?
Okay, so just to clarify, it's going to be 5 a.m. till 11 p.m. That's the motion, okay.
That's the amendment.
Thank you.
Ms. Cruz, we're talking in an area where you have your daycares about 44th and Oak Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about this one. I'm hearing the opposite from the neighbors from what you're hearing. So I'm gonna have to think about this one before I vote. Thank you.
Okay.
No further lights. We do have a motion and a second, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. for hours of operation. Mrs. Stothert?
Thank you. Well, I'm interested and concerned with what you are saying. You're saying you're hearing the opposite from the neighbors. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing the opposite. She's saying that the neighbors are welcoming this. I'm hearing that they have concerns about individuals that have a criminal record that may be in or around the neighborhood, either working or living in that area. On a Nebraska State Patrol website in particular, one very small group of neighbors are adamantly opposed just to the fear of traffic in a 24-hour operation. I'm going to have to think about this, but those are basically the concerns. I'm leaning towards, I see her point, I see my colleague's point, but those two things are still bothering me a little bit, but I'll make up my mind by the time it gets to me.
So you're concerned with people that are in the neighborhood as far as the safety of the kids coming and going, is
It's
what
my
you're saying?
understanding that there is a level 3 sex offender living within 2 blocks of this site. That was one of the concerns. The traffic was the other, and based upon what Mr. Weaver from the planning department is saying, they have some concerns as well, but it is under review.
Okay.
Mr. Festerson makes a good point, as does Mr. Jerem. So, I would probably be leaning towards that, but I will be making up my mind as we proceed. Don't mean to cause that confusion, but I do have those concerns. And we still have a motion and a second. No further lights. Roll call.
On the amendment, Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
As amended.
As amended. Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's adopted as amended, 7-0. Item number 9, resolution that the application submitted by Rainwood Hills Properties, LLC, for a major amendment to a special use permit to allow non-perturous landfill located southwest of 120th Street and Rainwood Road is hereby approved. A, Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B is communications opposing, and C is communications from their attorney.
Public hearing on item number 9 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Mr. President, fellow City Council members. My name is Mark Williams, attorney with Parsonage Vandenack Williams, here on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is very simply requesting a major amendment to their current special use permit that would allow them to remove a current 5-year kind of end period for the permit and schedule further reviews at the city planning and the planning board and the city council to coincide with the state approval through the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. So myself and my client are both here to answer any questions. We have made an attempt, as you've looked at the planning board minutes, we made an attempt to discuss some of the issues a couple of the neighbors have had. We believe we've addressed them to the greatest extent they can be addressed, and that my client's operating both in conformity with the law and the city regulations and as a good neighbor at that site. So we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other proponents? Any opponents?
I'm Helen Hayden, 11906 Hayden Street, Omaha, 68142. I live on the west side of the landfill. Back in 2005 was the first time that McCardle's grading went for the landfill permit. And the attorney from Dan Rock sent me a letter saying that we have an agreement that McCardle has agreed to, that we have a 5-year contract. It has a limited use permit. It has a, he's supposed to control the dust. He's supposed to take the mud off the road. He's supposed to have the trucks run on Rainwood. And then in February of 2006, he went to the state of Nebraska, above all you guys' knowing, and applied for a state of Nebraska Title 132 landfill permit, a permanent one. And nobody knew about that until there was a notice in the Omaha World Herald on September 2007. And at that point, we pulled him back into the city offices here for the planning board. And at that planning board on September 2008, he guaranteed us that there would be a 2.5-year and he would be done with this landfill up there. There wasn't any ifs, ands, and buts about it. It was 2.5 years. And when we got done with that meeting, Hal Daub said, well, at least there is a guarantee that he will be done in 2.5 years. And that was the agreement. Well, now here we are back again, and he wants another extension. The New York Rights Masoneries did sign off on the contract, but they have no interest in it anymore because they have their property up for sale, and they don't care what happens to the neighborhood out there. Hal Daub signed off on it, and so did the New York Masoneries. And all summer they grind. It starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, runs till 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's a terrible mess. And McCardle may be a very nice gentleman, but in the 5 years that he has ran this operation, not once has he stopped by our house to see if we were having any problems with the landfill, with the dust, with the anything on it. At least Clara Morgan, who owned it before him, would stop and ask us what was going on and if we were having problems with the trucking, or it has gotten out of hand. We have a contract. We want you to uphold the contract and turn him down, and this would get rid of the landfill at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents?
Darlene Tonak, 8909 North 117th Street, Omaha, Nebraska. We live just a little bit further down the road than the Haydens from this facility. From what I see and have read recently, it looks like we don't really have much chance to ask this not be approved. Should you decide to approve it, I would like you to take several things into consideration. One, if you recall, when the landfill for the city was on State Street, one of our dear friends passed away, and it was determined to be a responsibility of the damage to their water from that landfill. And the city did build another well for other people there, and the people's home is no longer there. It's been destroyed, and no one's allowed to live there. Okay, we all have shallow wells, and last time when we met in Bennington, they said, oh, it's just within so many feet, it's so many feet of this. Well, our well is 60 feet deep. And you can go up there, or at least I've not been on the property in the last year, but it's deep. I got to be assured that that drainage from the previous garbage, as well as what's going in there now, it's not just rocks and trees, it's the grass from the lawn companies that are allowed to bring in their stuff, it's whatever's coming in them dumpsters that are there. I mean, I can't believe that's all trees and concrete. You wouldn't put all that stuff in dumpsters. But anyway, I need some assurance that our well, my son's well, that's just a few feet from us, is okay, or will be okay. You got city water going across State Street, then bring it on around for the rest of us so we don't have to worry about this. If that's it, if that was gone, that would be one thing that I would feel that I can go to sleep at night and feel comfortable that the drinking water that we have is not cancerous or whatever else it may be. The second thing is the dirt. They start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they do go late at night. You hear that groan. And have you ever heard a car stuck trying to get out from a snow drift that we're going to be having here? It's vroom, vroom. It's there all the time. They're doing that. You can't sleep through it, especially when the wind is a little bit from the north. It's really loud. But that fine dust, it comes in your house. It's on your cars. It's everywhere. You can take your hand and feel it. You know, there's dust is dust, but then it's that grit. It's so fine. Well, my son has a lady that lives with him, and her two children have asthma really, really bad, and they're always sick with that. I don't know if the dust adds to that, but it certainly don't help. So that's my other issue, is control the dust. Whether they got to spray water on it or whatever they got to do, their berm is not there to take care of the dust. It's there to keep you from seeing what's going on inside. And the last thing, I'd just like to refresh you on this. We live in the 3-mile limit. We can't vote on any of you. Our own county representative says they can't help you. So the only place we can appeal for help is you. You know, we get taxed, we pay our taxes, we need somebody to represent us. So I beg you, please take some of our considerations into light when you make your vote. And add some restrictions. If you're going to approve it, add some restrictions. Give us something that on the long run they have to constantly test the water, do something. I don't know. But I'm sure you wouldn't want to live in that environment day after day after day for the next 20 years or more. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Mulligan?
Mrs. Tonak?
Yes.
Could you return to the podium, please? I'm sorry.
Yes.
The dust that you're complaining about, is that from the grinding operation?
That's where I'm assuming it's coming from. I mean, we've lived out there. I've lived out there ever since I was a kid. I've never had dust problems in my house until that all started. I mean, you know, maybe you get a little bit during harvest time, but this is every day.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Weaver, does the city of Omaha, do we do anything that we would monitor the groundwater in the area?
Chad Weaver, City Planning. I would assume that's a state function, water quality. I know that we aren't responsible for that. I doubt that Public Works is ever involved in anything like that, or even for landfills or such things.
Or would the city of Omaha, would we be responsible to monitor exactly what's getting placed into the landfill?
I would assume that would be a state function more so as well.
Okay.
I mean,
Because
we've got
there
restrictions with the use permit, but it's not something that we have the ability to go out and inspect for. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. And the attorney for the landfill, Mr. Williams.
Yes, Mark
Yes.
Williams.
Mark, what about the grinding operation? I know we had spoken a little bit about that at the pre-council meeting.
Yeah, the grinding operation is there. There's a licensed company that's there with essentially a portable grinder to grind up the concrete, so it's recycled and reused within the city. When Ms. Hayden brought those concerns up at the planning meeting, I spoke with my client about it. They spoke with the grinder about those operations, and the decision has been made, which you have a copy of the letter that I sent to Ms. Hayden, to suspend the concrete grinding operations. So those operations, one, should be slowing down, and two, will come to an end this coming April. So
will that be permanently suspended for the grinding operation?
I mean, I can't stand here and tell you permanently. I mean, if you look at this, if you look at the permit as we have it, you know, this permit does have an end date in it. The permit ends at the time that the Masonic York Rite Temple has a certificate of occupancy. So if they do develop the land, you know, this could be a short-term permit, you know, because the permit itself would end. But I can't tell you that there would never be future grinding operations. At this point in time, I can tell you that it's been a business decision, one, that it's not profitable enough, given that it's causing concerns to the neighbors, to continue doing grinding, which is the reason that the decision was made to stop it. So I guess what I'm telling you, and I don't mean to go in a roundabout way, but the direct answer is no. I can't tell you that it'll be stopped permanently, but the grinding operations are going to stop, and before they would be instituted again, they would certainly be looking at that grinding operator to determine what level of controls are in place to ensure that we don't get back to these same concerns that the Haydens and Ms. Tonick has with grinding dust.
And could we have, or at least could I have some kind of assurances that you may reach out and talk to your neighbors? I mean, it sounds like you've got some concerns there, that there has been a failure to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this process is certainly interesting, because during the entire time the landfill has been there. And understand, even though we got the special use permit 5 years ago, we didn't obtain an NDEQ permit to actually operate a landfill until just over a year ago. So the site hasn't really been in use for 5 years as a landfill. But we hadn't heard these concerns, and I understand, and I'm not going to dispute. My client doesn't stop over there on a regular basis and speak with them, but this is the first we've heard about the concern with the dust, the concern with the hours of operation, and all of those issues are being addressed, and we're going to make sure that they get fixed. I spoke with Ms. Hayden after the planning board meeting. I offered to come out to her house. I offered to meet with all of the neighbors out there to look at what can we do within reason to make the coexistence mutually beneficial, at least as much as we could. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a response from them all the way up until this date. I've left them a couple of messages. I followed up with a letter so that at least they would know, we're here, we are willing to reach out, we are willing to see what we can do to make this better.
Okay.
So I will be happy to continue those efforts. I would be happy to go sit down and meet with them. As you'll see in the letter, my client offered to go out and clean Miss Hayden's windows. I know she expressed that was a big concern of hers at the planning board meeting. So my client is willing to take steps to make sure that these operations can coexist with the neighbors.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Stothard?
Mr. Williams.
Certainly.
Probably ought to say your name again.
Mark Williams, Parsonage Van Den Ack Williams.
Thank you. If this was approved, what is the state requirement of how often they will review?
The state typically reviews the NDEQ permits every 5 years.
Okay.
And so we've got a review period that will be in September of 2012, because it was based on the beginning of that process. We would expect then every 5 years after that. So what we're proposing is actually to be back in front of you again in probably
2.5 years.
Well, a little bit less than 2 years.
Okay.
So that we would start the process back with city planning at the same time we start the renewal with NDEQ. So it will actually create us coming back here sooner than we have been for that next go, and then after that we expect it's a 5-year renewal process.
Okay. And then just the concerns of the neighbors, the dust you addressed, you said right now, at least temporarily, the grinding has been halted, but I'm sure what she's saying is that it's not just a matter of going out and cleaning her windows, it's the ongoing dust.
Correct.
So I'm sure that is a concern, and it would be of mine too, but right now, temporarily, that's halted, and as long as you are aware that this is a problem of the residents in the area, the dust is concerning them. Also, she mentioned the mud on the streets. Are you aware of that now, and are you making an attempt to keep the streets clean?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
and the cleaning equipment was always available. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when we saw the pictures that were provided at the city planning, the planning board meeting, it was concerning. It was upsetting to my client as a business owner that his people on site were not effectively cleaning the streets as they were supposed to. So the equipment's there, the procedures are in place that are supposed to have stopped that from happening, and we have been assured from our employees that that's not going to happen again. I did follow up with the Hightowers a couple of weeks ago before the city council meeting, and in speaking with Ms. Hightower, it appears that they've been satisfied with the results of those changes.
And what about your hours of operation? Are those, you have regular hours of operation, and are those being followed? It would concern me if you start grinding again, if you're doing this in the middle of the night.
No, they are being followed. I think what happened is, because of some of the unusual weather that we had this summer, some of the grinding operations did take place into the evening hours a little bit and on the weekend hours a little bit. That's not a normal operating hour. We have an operating plan. It's a Monday through Friday work hour operation. Those evening and weekend operations were all related to the grinding. And so, and I don't want you to misunderstand, the grinding operations will cease in April of 2011. So they have not stopped. I mean, through the winter months, they're certainly slower, but they will stop, at least at this point, coming this April. And we believe that will also, and has also, affected a reduced amount of traffic into the site and gotten us back into more of a normal operating plan.
And just to clarify, you said that this has been operating in this area for 4.5 years, but not that length of time as a landfill.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess what my client's major operations is not to actually put stuff into the ground here. And if I can explain, this is a construction debris landfill. So there is more than just concrete coming onto the site. And sometimes there will be construction dumpsters that are brought onto the site with wood materials and things that would normally come out of tearing down buildings when you're clearing land. And my client is trying to recycle those items so they can be put back into the community and used, not to bury items underground.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mulligan?
Mrs. Hayden, you don't need to return to the podium, but just as far as these muddy roads are concerned, if that continues to be an issue, you contact me personally, okay? And I'll help you with that, because I know that's an unsafe condition, and it's very annoying, and I'll be glad to help you with that, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, would you come back up again? Just restate your name.
That's Mark Williams, Parsonage, Van Den Eyck Williams.
Concerned about the well water out there. What is your response to the concerns from Mrs. Tonek?
Yeah, the water issues, part of the reason why this is such a long process from when we first received the special use permit is because the state Department of Environmental Quality obviously is the governmental body responsible for the groundwater contamination and to ensure that the water is being protected in the manner required by state and federal law. So the NDEQ, we received our permit through the NDEQ. They're the ones responsible for making sure that, from a government regulation side, ensuring the materials brought to the site are within the scope of the permit that we have, making sure that we're handling the materials appropriately so that we don't harm groundwater. So I guess my answer to you is that we're doing everything we can within the requirements of the NDEQ, which required that as part of the build-out, we had to provide plans to the NDEQ and prove to them, which our engineers did, that what our operations would not impact that groundwater or the well water.
All right, thank you. Planning Department, Mr. Weaver, based upon what you have heard here today, being the concerns by the neighbors, is it or could it be a practice from your department to notify the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality of the concerns that were brought out at a public meeting so they could follow up to them, since your department does not do that?
Certainly we could forward minutes of meetings, so forth, make them aware.
Okay. Then I would ask you to do that.
Motion approved.
And let's see. We have a motion and a second.
Yes, we do.
We have no further lights. Roll call.
Thompson?
No.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
it's approved on a 6-1 vote. Liquor, item number 10, Blanche Burgers plus bottles, 3157 Farm Street, Suite 7113. Class C application, new location. You have a communications from their attorney requesting that the outdoor seating area be amended out.
A public hearing on item number 10 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, honorable members of the City Council, Brian Mick & Associates, PC, 11422 Miracle Hills Drive, number 401. We are the law firm representing the applicant. I also have Jennifer Price, the member and manager, owner of the proposed operation, with me to answer any questions you may have. You also have, I believe in the file, a letter from Midtown Crossing, East Campus Realty, the landlord, in support of the proposed restaurant operation.
We do.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Motion to amend the application to exclude the outdoor eating area.
Second. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
Yeah, we do.
As amended.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
Granted as amended, 7-0. Item number 11, Coliseum's Ultra Lounge, 17525 Gold Street, Suite 103. New application, old location for Class C liquor license.
Public hearing on item number 11 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Rob Hopkins with the Coliseum, here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's granted 7-0. Item number 12, Nosh's Wine Lounge, 1006 Dodge Street, Class C application, new location.
Public hearing on item number 12 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, honorable members of the City Council, Brian Mick and Associates, PC, 11422 Miracle Hills Drive, number 401. We are the firm representing the applicant, Nosh Wine LLC. I have with me Lila Anderson, member and manager, and Sean Robinson, the corporate manager.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
It's granted 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Item number 13, Voodoo Lounge at 304 North 168th Circle, Suite 210, Class C liquor license, new application, no location.
Public hearing on item number 13 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tom Penke. I'm an attorney in town. My office is at 406 North 130th Street here in Omaha. I'm here representing the applicant, Voodoo Lounge, Inc. With me is Kyron O'Brien, the owner-manager of the establishment. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Move the approval.
Second. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's granted 7-0. Item number 14, the Getaway Lounge, 4745 South 96th Street. Class C liquor license, no application, no location.
Public hearing on item number 14 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Carrie Zimmerman with the Getaway Lounge, if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's
Move
closed.
the approval.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's granted 7-0. Item number 15 is Double Barrel Nightclub, 10841 Q Street. New application, new location of Class I liquor license. We have communications from the president of the corporation requesting that they be allowed to withdraw their application.
So moved.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's withdrawn 7-0. Item number 16 is Grand Fortune Chinese Cuisine, 17330 West Center Road, Suite 106. Class I liquor license, no application, no location.
Public hearing on item number 16 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, council members, Rob Lee, 1403 Farnham Street, Suite 214. I am the attorney representing RT Hong Enterprises LLC. With me today is the member manager of RT Hong, here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Move the approval.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's granted 7-0. We'll take items 17 and 18 together. 17 is Rusty Nail Inn, 14210 Pierce Plaza, new application, old location for a Class I. 18 is for a package liquor license. You have a communication from their attorney requesting that these two applications be combined and amended to a Class C liquor license.
Public hearing on items 17 and 18 begin now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, my name is Sean Kelly, here today on behalf of the applicant. The applicant is present, and we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Thompson?
Yes, I think that's the applicant back there. Just wanted to know, are you still going to have your famous wings? You're going to continue those?
Yes.
All right. Tell Ted that I said you still have to, he has to pass on the recipe.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
That's a
Condition of approval.
Move the approval.
The amendment, we need to amend it to Class C.
Move the amendment.
Yeah.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
And Mr. Jerem passes the second time for a potential conflict of interest.
As amended.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gray?
With the wings, yes.
Jerem passes. Mulligan? Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Took the words right out of my mouth.
And Jerem
Yes.
passes a second time for a potential conflict of interest. It's granted as amended 7-0. Items 19 and 20 we'll take as one. 19 is Crystal Beverage Mart, 480709 South 20th Street. A package liquor license, no application, old location. And 20 is adding a catering liquor license, same applicant at the same location.
Public hearing on items 19 and 20 begin now. Are there any proponents?
Members of the council, Stephen Delaney on behalf of Crystal Beverage Mart, Tom Jones, the principal.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mrs. Stothard?
Mr. Jones,
Yes, ma'am.
why don't you say your name, address? Name and address?
George T. Jones, 1818 Locust Street.
And you are the president and the manager.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Jones, I am really concerned with your criminal history. You have 15 charges here. And as a manager, your job is to make sure you follow the rules and regulations of the law, and you can't follow the rules and regulations of the law. So this gives me great concern. Can you tell us how you've changed your behavior that these things won't happen again and that you will be a responsible manager?
Yes, ma'am. Most of those offenses were several years ago. Since then, I've worked really hard and become a father and helped me mature over the years.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Jones, there has been some concern brought to my attention regarding the not only your record, which my colleague has addressed, also in regards to the aesthetics around the building. What are your plans to improve those? You've mentioned that you have personally improved over the years. What are your plans on taking care of that facility?
I'd like to improve the facility. I'd like to remodel. I'd like to clean the facility up around the area, and slowly, over time, invest back into the business to get it to where I'd like it to be.
So it would be my understanding that as opposed from taking from the neighborhood, you'd be part of the neighborhood as a corporate partner and as a good neighbor?
Yes, sir.
You know, I'm willing to give a person one chance. I've kept that the 9 years that I've been on the council, and I'm leaning towards that now. But this might sound funny to those that are watching this on TV. A couple of those charges have to do with animals. Do you currently have animals in your family?
Yes, I do.
I noticed that at least two of them that you couldn't control that, and sometimes animal behavior sort of follows into a business, especially that in a neighborhood. Maybe not so much in an industrial area or an HC area. Can you assure this council that that part of your life is also under control?
Yes, sir.
What measures do you have in place now, or do you plan on putting in place to make sure that you do become not just a corporate partner, but also a good neighborhood partner? Share a few of those with us, would you?
Like I said, I'd like to remodel the place. It's a historic site. It's been around for several years, and I'd like to clean up do some landscaping, tear out some of the old bushes, clean up some of the trash that's accumulated in the back, and be something for the community to have at convenience.
Tell me about the plans that you have for your personnel inside the building. If there was a concern about, and I'm not saying that there is, but I've asked these questions before, where maybe underage kids are obtaining alcohol through a proprietor in a neighborhood. What measures are you putting in place to prevent that? Because this is a rather large facility. This isn't just your little corner bar. This is where you have people can actually drive in off the street, park under covered parking, and walk in and purchase, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then tell me and this council what measures you're going to put in place to prevent underage purchases and the security that you've got for your own personnel and your customers.
Myself and my employees will be carding, and they will have to have valid ID, Nebraska state-issued license, along with the rest of the guidelines for ID. They will be checking for that.
Mr. Delaney, would you recommend to your client, or have you recommended to your client to partake in the classes that are available for those in the alcohol industry on how to check for bad ID and those types of things?
Councilman, I believe my client is aware of those, is planning on implementing. He wants to run a business that is not only reputable, but that is compliant with the law. He's investing a large sum of money, certainly has no intention of throwing that away by being closed down because of liquor violations. He's willing to take whatever classes and do whatever is necessary in order to have this business succeed.
Mr. Jones, would you be willing, as a condition, to join the local neighborhood association in that area and participate as a good corporate partner within that neighborhood?
Yes, I would.
All right. That's all that I have for right now. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, sir. I'm talking to the young gentleman again. I'm really a person that's pro young people, and I always like to give, second chance myself. In fact, I come from a family full of hellraisers, and one of my brothers, he was the type of person when he was younger, you want to throw him under the bus. But believe it or not, he grew older and grew wiser, and now he's the opposite. He's a model citizen. So I'm asking you, are you the type of person that can turn it around and become a plus for the community instead of a minus?
I have every intention, sir.
Okay. I like the way you answered that, so I'm going to believe you. And we're going to have to watch closely. So we'll be listening and we'll be watching. And if things go wrong, we'll have to pull you back in. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
If I may, Councilman Thompson and also Councilwoman Stothert, I've been Mr. Jones' attorney, I would say about 12 years. I've seen tremendous growth in him. One of the charges that I know you're concerned about on the 1999 assault conviction, I'd represented Mr. Jones on that. The person that's before this council today is a much different person than I represented back in 1999. And without going into the details of that particular case, it looks much more ominous on paper than the reality of the entire situation. Having known Mr. Jones for this amount of time, I've gotten to know him, his family. I support him in this endeavor. Seeing the changes over the years from being basically a kid back then to running a business that he ran, sold, and is now using to invest back into the community. He's done remarkably well for his age. I think the fact that he wants to invest in this community again and put his money back into the community says a lot for him. I would ask that you support his application.
Thank you. Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess what I would like to see is if we're going to grant this application, and I do hope that we do, because I would like to see this young man get an opportunity as well. But I think I would like to, just for purposes of making sure that the property gets cleaned up and so forth, and that the training gets done with his staff and employees and so forth, would recommend a 6-month review for the liquor committee so that we can take a look at that. If that would be okay, if you all are willing to do that with a 6-month review, I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Jones, what sort of kind of changed my mind here a little bit, the fact that it appears that you have grown out of the nasty adolescent stage and has learned quite a bit and knows the actual definition of positive growth. And I think I'm a fairly good judge of body language, and I think that one of the things that I've noticed, that you probably noticed the growth around that particular area. The school has invested several $1 million in a complex just to the northwest of your facility. Several local veterans groups have grown and remodeled and invested into the community. And small businesses around there, plus a major elementary school is in that neighborhood. So I'm going to support this, but the reason I'm saying what I just got through saying, that there's, the eyes of South Omaha will probably be upon you, and I know that you don't want to disappoint yourself and your family. But there are going to be people out there watching, but I'm willing to support you, and we'll move forward. Oh, we have another light here. Mrs. Stothard.
No, I just want to say, I appreciate your explanation for in 99, but some of these were in 07 and 08, so they were just a few years ago. So it wasn't when he was just a child. So, my concerns still stand. These are a lot of charges on here.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. No further lights. Roll call.
With caveat.
Caveat that 6-month review and that they do the things they said they're going to do. Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's granted with the conditions 5-2.
Thank you.
Item 21, Crane Coffee Cafe, 1403 Farm Street, Suite 136, a catering liquor license, no application, no location. They presently hold a Class C liquor license.
Public hearing on item number 21 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, I'm Lori Forrester with Crane Coffee, and I'm the president at 1403 Farnham, Omaha, Nebraska.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Thompson.
Oh, just wanted to say that I think that Crane Coffee has some of the best product in the city. You guys are really, as the kids say, you're the bomb.
Thank you very much.
got a couple organizations that need him on a commercial.
Yeah. Move the approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson? Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Item number 22, Regency Lodge, 909 South 107th Avenue. Request permission to appoint Trista Nielsen manager.
Public hearing on item number 22 begins now. Are there any proponents?
I'm Trista Nelson of the Regency Lodge, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Motion approved.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard? Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Item 23, Lone Star Steakhouse and Saloon, 17501 West Center Road. Request permission to appoint Sean Lamb manager.
Public hearing on item number 23 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Lamb, General Manager of Lone Star Steakhouse, 17501 West Center Road. Here's a proponent, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Move the approval. Second.
Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Item number 24, Quick Shop number 693 at 5306 North 103rd Street. Request permission to appoint June Cullum manager.
Public hearing on item number 24 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is June Cullum. I'm the district manager for Quick Shop, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Second, roll call.
Thompson? Yes. Festerson? Yes. Gray? Yes. Jerem? Mulligan? Yes. Stothard? Mr. President.
Yes.
It's approved 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause an item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by City Council immediately following consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by City Council rules of order.
Public hearings on agenda items numbers 25 through 26 were held on November the 9th. Do we have a motion? Second. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Yes. Stothard? Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
They're all passed 7-0.
Public hearings on agenda items number 27 through 35 begin now. 27 through 35. Proponents? Any opponents? Public hearings closed. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard? Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
They're all adopted 7-0. Ordinance on final reading, item number 36, ordinance approving an amendment to the professional management and engineering contract with CH2M Hill for combined sewer overflow program.
Public hearing was continued to today. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon, Marty Great, Public Works. I would like to take just a few minutes of your time maybe to kind of cover what this contract extension is and why it's both necessary and appropriate step for us to take. Today's combined sewer overflow program is a massive program, as you're all well aware, and it's not a program that's just a series of projects that we check off a list. It's actually a program. There are a lot of elements to it, and it's very complicated. We started with sewer separation in our CSO area over 20 years ago, and since that time we have implemented a series of projects and spent over $100 million to greatly reduce overflows of raw sewage, more importantly, out of people's basements. Our program kind of took a turn, though, regulatorily in about 2002 when we were issued a permit by the state of Nebraska. This permit required the city to begin doing a number of things, including developing a long-term control plan. But it really wasn't until 2005 that we received very specific marching orders from the state, and that was that we come up with a plan, not that's going to chip away at it, but that is going to control those overflows in a 15-year period. With that knowledge of that expectation, the City of Omaha looked around at what other communities, and there are 771 others across the nation that are involved in programs like this, and decided that we needed a lot of help. We needed a program management team to assist us in meeting these challenges. So in May of 2006, we went out for requests for proposals for engineering consulting teams to help us develop this control plan. We went through what the law requires and our code requires, a qualification-based selection process, where these consultant teams submitted proposals on how they might help us. And then we looked at all the written proposals, we shortlisted down to a few firms, and then we went through interviews to select a team that was comprised of CH2M Hill, an engineering consulting team based in the Denver area, in partnership with HD&R and Lamprey Nearson Associates, two Omaha-based teams. We negotiated a $24.6 million contract with that team. Included within that $24.6 million was kind of $11 million that were earmarked to distribute to other consulting teams. So there were a large number of firms involved with this planning effort. This contract also envisioned this program continuing from the planning stage on into the implementation stage. And so while we worked to pull our plan together, we also had elements in that contract to begin some early action design and engineering studies. This contract was amended for the first time in April of 2009, and that amendment was intended to provide about $500,000 of extra design work to pull off designs of some of the work that was done down in the Cummings Street area. The second amendment to this contract was in May of 2009, and that again was a contract extension like this is. We added another $22.4 million of work under that amendment. Like this amendment that we're looking at today, that was a combination of program work and also of engineering work. There was a minor no-cost amendment in June of this year, and finally, excuse me, finally this amendment that we have today. And this amendment is for nearly $60 million, but it is a 5-year amendment, so it's a longer-term amendment. In this amendment, 60% of the money, again, is for program management. About 40% is for engineering design. And I think one of the things that's important to recognize is that under this program that we'll be implementing over the next 5 years, we'll have a total of expense of over $500 million. So again, $60 million is a lot of money, but we're going to be managing a much larger sort of project. Here so far, we've already involved 42 different firms in coming up with these engineering designs. The program management approach that the city's employed has been very successful for us. We've received a lot of accolades nationally and certainly from our regulatory authorities. We believe that this program extension is a logical thing to do. It will allow us to satisfy the federal mandates. It'll allow us to help keep this program affordable for the community, and it will provide opportunities to get multiple benefits out of these designs. The program has earned, my confidence, and I would ask for your positive consideration of this amendment. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents?
Fred Conley, 3354 North 37th Street. I don't know if you could categorize me as an opponent, because what they're doing and what the city is doing to alleviate the problem across the city with overflow is obviously a very admirable thing to do. But I think there are some concerns with regards to how this is moving forward. And I want to speak to some key points I think that you need to take into consideration as you possibly approve this. One is, I think Marty indicated that there are 42 firms that have benefited from the dollars that have been appropriated since this agreement was originally passed in 2006. The question is, how many women-owned and minority firms are within that 42? I would say there are probably none. And that's one of the concerns moving forward, is whether women and minority-owned firms are going to benefit from roughly what I understood was a $1.6 billion problem. Will probably be $2.5 billion by the time you get through expending money over the next 15 to 20 years. The city passed the Small and emerging business ordinance nearly a year ago. The intent of the ordinance was to create economic growth of both small businesses with a focus on small businesses in the poverty census tracts. The program to date has been successful in generation of many construction contracts. However, it has been largely unsuccessful in the area of professional services, and that's the area that I'm speaking to, engineering contracts to minority and women-owned firms. The addendum to the CMH contract brings the total contract amount, as Marty indicated, to over $106 million from 2006 till today, if you approve the $59 million today. And again, of that $106 million that's going to be expended, very little or none of that has went to women and minority-owned professional services businesses. The original CMH2 Hill contract had DBE, PBE requirements. I'd like to know what percentage of the original $24 million that was approved in 2006 met their DBE, PBE requirements. There are several engineering firms on the small and emerging business that currently have the capacity and ability to assist as subcontractors with this contract. And the question is, how are they going to benefit over a 5-year period of time? Now, the question is, why is the contract even 5 years? I don't think Marty really explained that, except that's just something they proposed. Why is the contract 2 years? Well, you can evaluate as you go along how much of that business actually goes to women and minority-owned businesses. You could certainly have a 2-year contract with an extension for another 3 years, assuming that they were meeting reasonable goals in terms of those areas. So the question is, why is it 5 years rather than 2 years or 3 years? Subcontractors under the contract, and I've looked at that, can be added to the city contract at any point in time. The contract even calls out 2 levels of subcontractors. And I think one of the ways to address that issue is make minority and women-owned contractors part of the program management agreement. That's one way you could basically achieve some reasonable goals within that document. The mayor's goal for small and emerging business participation is 14%. We have been told with each contract that the next contract will meet the goal. We are concerned about this pattern. Each time these contracts come up, well, we're going to be meeting the goal in the future, except that really never ever comes. And so I think that's something that needs to be addressed as these contracts come up, how we're going to include women and minority-owned businesses in professional services regarding the CSO project. CMH2 Hill has a department in Denver and a page of their website dedicated to small, women, and minority and veteran-owned businesses. They further state in their value statement that they value diversity. Why are they not using the tools provided to them in their own company? Why aren't minorities, since they value diversity, why aren't women and minority-owned professional services firms included in getting contracts with this project? So I guess the question is, are we going to continue to talk about what's going to be achieved in the future rather than what we're trying to achieve right now? And if you've got an ordinance that speaks to this, then we ought to at least see that some measure of participation of minority and women-owned businesses occur in the near future, not in some 10, 15-year future down the road. Those are the concerns that I have, and I think some minority and women-owned businesses obviously have with regards to the amount of money that's going to be expended over the next 10 to 15 years in terms of relieving the problem that we really have in the city of Omaha. Thank you very much, and I want to thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mrs. Stothard?
It's Marty Great to come back up.
Marty Great, Public Works.
Marty, just to clarify, what we are approving today, this amendment, this is a management contract, correct?
Correct.
And although you said there were 40% was engineering, 60% was program management for this contract. Now, this is to manage a $1.5+ billion project. And so do you foresee that we would have any shortage of opportunities within the scope of this project for minority businesses to take a great role in this project?
There will certainly be a lot of opportunities coming down the road. Just within the next 5-year period, if you set aside all of the value of this contract, we envision having another $111 million worth of engineering type work and almost $250 million, or excuse me, over $500 million worth of work in construction trades.
So, I mean, we have the capacity then to have opportunities for, I would say, almost all of our Tier 1, Tier 2 certified businesses.
Yeah, right now, and I think Mr. Connolly alluded to it, right now we probably don't have enough engineering consultant type firms certified in our ESBSB program to satisfy the demand that we have.
Okay. And in fact, we talked about this morning in Public Works, but the scope of the work that is needed to be done, the dollar amount is going to severely increase within the next couple of years. In fact, I think you said in 2012, we're going to award around $170 million worth of work.
Yeah, just to put some context to it, historically when we were doing our sewer separation projects before the CSO program, we would do between $6 and $8 million of work a year of sewer separation, and we as a Public Works Department, we're pretty much capable of handling that work. But this year we plan to award around $28 million worth of contracts, next year $34 million, and then in 2012, where we really go from a study design phase into a construction phase, we do anticipate over $170 million worth of construction work being awarded in that year.
Okay. And just also, in closing with this contract too, you followed the process that's been established.
Yes, again, we use the qualification-based selection process for professional services, and that's what's required by a code, and that's also consistent with the Brooks Act.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of questions and a couple of comments here, or a comment or two, but first of all, a couple of questions. The 42 companies that you talked about, Marty, we've gone over that. How many of those are women and minority-owned companies at this point?
I don't think we track those as women and minority. I don't know that the law allows us to do that. I checked this afternoon, and it looks like there are 5 ESB firms that are among those 42.
But are they women and minority-owned? Is that what I'm talking? You don't track it that way?
No, and Paul, if you can provide, a legal point to it, my understanding is that with state law being what it is, that we're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of women and minority like we did when we had the PBDB program.
Paul, if you would,
Sure.
please.
Paul Kratz, glad to respond. You're correct. Before we had a disadvantaged business program, we did track that. Then the constitutional amendment was passed a couple years ago. We then switched to a small emergent business program to avoid any conflict with that constitutional amendment. So Mr. Great's doing it correctly by not tracking necessarily, at least officially tracking the minority and women-owned businesses, and simply tracking the small emerging businesses pursuant to our existing code.
But there's nothing, I guess, as long as we can't even track it based on the law? We can't even track those numbers based on the law?
You get in somewhat of a vague area there, because if you do track it, then you run into the argument or allegation that you're really given preferences. But I think generally you probably could track it and avoid any type of lawsuit. But there's always that type of argument that could come up.
Okay,
we could track it if we want to.
Yeah, I think that we need to track that, even if we don't, even if we can't use it, or we're not reaching out to people in that sort of way. But I think we ought to really be tracking that just to see what the numbers are, so that we are, so that we at least have. We've got one of the poorest communities in the country, all right? And the fact of the matter is, even though we have a law in place like that, I think we ought to at least be tracking it, because we've got one of the poorest communities in the country, one of the poorest African-American communities in the country. And I think we need to be, I think we ought to be looking at that in some fashion, even if we don't, even if we're not allowed to pick people based on those kinds of numbers, unless we're talking about federal money. And then when we're talking about federal money, as I understand it, that supersedes whatever the state law is, as I understand it, right?
Paul Kratz, City Attorney, just for that particular program.
For federal money. When we're taking federal money, we have to adhere to the DBE, PBE programs that's set up by the federal government. Is that right?
For the expenditure of that money.
Of those federal dollars. Okay. All right. Are there any federal dollars that are being used at this point?
We have had some limited federal dollars. We also have some earmark money that has those kind of attachments to it. So we certainly will be complying with the federal requirements in those cases, yes.
Okay. The 5-year contract, tell me why that is.
The 5-year contract is to kind of marry up the program management with our regulatory cycles. The state issues us permits, and they're on 5-year cycles, and the permit kind of defines what work we have to do, so we have in our marching orders enough specificity of what we're going to do to be able to scope a contract out that far. It's our intent that absent any kind of problem that comes up with the program, that we'll continue with this program management team all the way through. It wouldn't be efficient to totally change leadership. But we can only really do it in 5-year increments because that's as specific as our permit conditions are.
Okay. Is someone from CH2M Hill here?
Yes, Tom Heineman, their lead representative.
If you could come to the microphone for me, please, just for a second. And identify yourself just for the record and tell us a little bit about what your role is in this process.
Yes, my name is Tom Heineman, CH2M Hill. My local address is 210 South 16th Street, number 507. And my role on the program is basically the program management. I'm the CSO consultant program manager, which means that my responsibility is to manage the consultant services in an integrated fashion with city staff to deliver the $1.7 billion worth of capital improvements that the city has to deliver.
Okay, and I know we just can't. I know you can't, make a commitment here other than to say you will do the best that you can. But I just want to hear that for the record, that if on your website you talk about women and minority-owned businesses and being a participant in those sorts of things, is CH2M Hill, along with the other partners, going to endeavor as much as you can to include women and minority-owned businesses in the process?
Yes, you have my
from the census tract.
Yes.
All right. And those pretty much take care of my questions. But I want to make a statement here because it has been, because Mr. Stothard, you're right in that there's the potential for tremendous opportunities, but specifically in poorer communities, in the African American community, we have seen for nearly 40 years promises be made and not be kept. I can go back to the Community Development Block Grant Fund program when that first started off, and we got initially $30 million and then $25 million. And all of that was based on census tract data that you got primarily from North Omaha, but very little of those resources over the years, which nearly amounted to $1 billion, ever made their way to the community that should have been most impacted. So to say that there are tremendous opportunities, those tremendous opportunities are there, but the concern that many of us have, and the reason why I harp on this so much, is because we've got a history in this city of saying that we're going to do what we're going to do right by minorities, we're going to do right by women, we're going to do right by poor people, and at the end of the day we get crumbs and nothing else. And so that's why I'm watching this program closely. At least at this point in time, as long as I'm going to council, this is going to be more than just lip service and talk. We're going to reach some realities here, and we're going to reach some conclusions, because in this economic downturn, the people who are almost always affected the most are those who have always been poor. And we need to try and turn that around if we can. And this is an opportunity to do that, and we need to take that opportunity as much as we can. There have been times in the past, over the last 40 or 50 years, where promises have been made, things have been said about inclusion, and none of those things have ever happened. I just want you all to be aware of that. That's the history that I look at, that I see it from, that many in the community see it from. And so we all in this together have an obligation to do what's right in this particular instance. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Great, what do you feel about Mr. Conley's suggestion that we have a 2-year contract with a 3-year renewal? What are your feelings about that?
My strong preference would be to have a 5-year contract as we have right now. Again, it is a very long and tedious process to negotiate these contracts, and we really like to keep it as long as we possibly can. I personally can't see any benefit of shortening it down to 2 years and 3 years. We've already got an established track record with this team. I believe they've been doing good work for us, and I believe there's a lot of other work out there that will be available to spread around and hopefully capture additional diversity and other program benefits. But I just don't see anything good for the program to try to shorten the term lower than 5 years.
Thank you. Mr. Paul Kratz?
Yes, sir.
City Legal. My understanding of state law is that we do not track, we should not track by race and gender, but however, if we have concerns with regards to social economic, that's allowed. Is that correct?
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. I'm not sure I can distinguish between the two, and it depends what you use the tracking for. We track, a lot of governments track a number of different situations, and I guess I don't have too much of a problem with that. It's how you implement that and what you use those statistics for that become a concern.
The state law does not allow us to have preference based on gender and race. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But the state law does not say that we cannot help poor people. Is that correct?
That's correct, too. That's why we established a small emerging business program.
So it could be poor, white, brown, black, red, whatever.
That's correct. So
as one of the old-timers on this council, I'd like to, for the record, to show that this council is aware of the state law and that we are interested in helping poor people. And that's my intent, is to watch out for poor people and not break the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gray?
And that's good, but my intent is I want to see the numbers for minorities and women. I do want to see those numbers. I don't think there's anything in the law that says we can't track that. So I think I would want to see that. Secondly, one of the ways that, as Mr. Connolly pointed out, one of the ways that we can arrive at this 14% number that this mayor has talked about, I think one of the things we ought to do is, I'm going to be supportive of this contract, and I'll be supportive of the 5 years that goes with this contract. But if there's another amendment that's going to come here, I think one of the best ways to do that is to be inclusive of some of the census tract individuals involved on the management team. So if there are going to be future contract extensions like this, I would want to see something come forward that would include an extension of the management team. Can we do that, or is there any problem with that? Legally, Mr.
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. I don't believe so. We have a contract right now. We went through a process to hire this management team, and they've been in place for a number of years. To simply, on an ad hoc basis, add somebody, we cannot do that. We would have to go through the entire process again and select a new management team with additional people. Now, if this management team desires to subcontract various portions, various aspects of its projects, which is what it's doing now, I mean, that's appropriate, and that's occurring right now. But to add another partner in this team would be inappropriate.
Okay, but we do have an agreement that, I mean, at least in principle, that we will be considering, other individuals to gain contracts for purposes of engineering and design work and other kinds of things like that, right?
Yes, there is programmed right now for this program management team to manage another pool of $111 million over the next 5 years, and that will be awarded to different consultants and certainly will not be used to fund the program management team itself. They're excluded from competition for those funds. So these are separate and they'll be managed, but they won't be funds that are available to the program management team for engineering.
Okay, and let me just finish by reiterating. Thank you. I'm finished. I just want to reiterate again for this council and for the Public Works Department and others in the audience, the fact of the matter is we've had promises that have been made for over a significant period of time, and in most instances those promises weren't even close to being kept. That is the background from which we operate, and we all need to keep that in mind as we continue to move forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're talking about the whole city here, I would think.
We're talking about the whole city.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
I just don't want the impression is that, it stops at a certain street.
No, it doesn't stop at a certain street, but it stops it. But we do want minority and women inclusion in that across this city.
Okay. And Mr. Great?
Marty Great, Public Works.
Mr. Gray asked, I think, an important question, but the law department has said that we probably couldn't do that. But there's also another option, Public Works, if a point in time came that you were not satisfied with that team, the bottom fell out, or there was misappropriation, or some malfeasance, or some criminality, or whatever, you could recommend and come back and either do an amendment or go back to square one if need be. Would that be fairly accurate to say?
Certainly, I'm sure there are conditions under which we could sever that contract, whether it was at the end of the 5-year term or before then, if there was cause.
Okay.
I certainly don't anticipate that, but yes.
Well, I'm not trying to throw a bucket of sewage on this thing, don't get me wrong, but because this is really important. We've got a 1.6 or 1.7 billion dollar project, and that has an extraordinary amount of moving parts to it, and I can see the complexity of it. And as a ratepayer, that's going to be the funding project of this. Is that accurate to say as well?
Yes, this community is going to make a huge investment in this program, and we, as a program management team, owe it to those ratepayers to make sure that we provide a good investment for those dollars.
Okay, and we're placing, as a legislative body, our faith in our administrative side, i.e. Public Works, to make sure that this thing gets pulled off. But just for the record, and for those that are watching, this is a federal mandate, and we're either getting no or very little amount of money from the federal government to do this. Is that accurate to say?
You're exactly right.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Yes, sir.
No further lights. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem?
Yes.
Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
It's passed 7-0. Item number 37, ordinance to establish the Benson Improvement District, BID number 687, under the authority of the Business Improvement District Act of the State of Nebraska.
Public hearing on item number 37 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Bridget Hadley, Planning Department. Just want to say on behalf of the Planning Department, we are in support of this Business Improvement District. We did work with the group to look at helping to finalize the Business Improvement District and do recommend your support and approval.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents?
My name is Greg Bourne. I'm the current BID chairman and 6117 Maple business owner and business association member. We're just here to ask for your support to help Benson grow in the future and answer any questions.
Thank you. Next proponent.
I'm Mark Goodall, business owner at 6104 Maple Street. I'm president of the Benson Business Association, and we're very supportive of this, if you have any questions.
Thank you. Next proponent.
Troy Arthur, 3306 MID Council Bluffs. I'm actually the president of the Benson Ames Alliance. I also represent Bank of the West, who's a large property holder there, who has not been assessed or part of the BID in the past. And just here to offer my support on behalf of both those entities for this approval of this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next proponent.
Good afternoon, Honorable President and Council. My name is Liz Moldenhauer. I live at 2345 North 64th Street. I am the president of the Benson Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to express my support for this expanded BID. Along with the entities represented here, the BNA believes that this is an important economic tool for the downtown Benson area. We ourselves are committed to this project, by our support of our goal to expand and to enhance our Citizens Patrol. We're excited to see progress in downtown Benson, and we look forward to working together to make Benson better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next proponent? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just want to thank all my friends in Benson for all their hard work. It's been a long time in coming, and lots of meetings at Burke's Pub. Weren't there? We don't need to revisit any details of the ordinance here. We approved this unanimously just recently, and this is the final version of it. But I will take 1 second to toot Benson's horn, because in addition to this BID that gets approved today, we have approved a tax increment financing district for Benson. We have $1.4 million in infrastructure improvements happening in that downtown area in the next couple years. We've done some things like increased bike patrols from the Omaha Police Department, and we're seeing the benefits of this already with some renovated storefronts and things underway right now. And this will only help us do that, to help us keep it moving forward and help create those jobs. The one thing I was asked before the meeting was when this would go into effect. If approved here in a minute, it will be in effect in a couple of weeks, and then therefore the new BID board will be in effect. So at that juncture, what's happening, our next conversation should be about reappointing those individuals and expanding and filling those certain slots together with the mayor and getting those back on the council agenda in the next few weeks. So look forward to doing that with you. With that, I'd move approval.
Second. No further lights. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan?
Yes.
Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes.
It's passed 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, third reading public hearing on agenda items 38 through 39 shall be held on December 7th. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, third reading on agenda item number 40 shall be held on December 7th. The public hearing on this item is today. Item 40, ordinance approving amendment to the interlocal agreement between the City of Omaha and Douglas County to provide funding to perform the GIS services necessary for the Omaha Lincoln retrofit ramp-up program.
Public hearing on item number 40 begins now. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
That's just public hearing only.
Oh, it says can
Oh,
be
it should not say that because it's second hearing.
Okay.
Resolution, item number 41, resolution that the Midtown West study area as previously approved by resolution number 857 is hereby expanded to include additionally 3-block area located between Charles Street and Seward Street, between North Saddle Creek Road and 50th Street.
Public hearing on item number 41 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Bridget Hadley, Planning Department, here to just present the resolution to amend the Midtown West blight and substandard designation, just simply to add 3 blocks. The blight and substandard designation was approved by City Council in August, and if I may show you just pictorially as a refresher. These light areas represent the green area represents the blighted area, and this was what was approved by City Council in August. The light purple areas actually represent potential commercial development opportunities, and these are along corridors. This particular corridor is a Saddle Creek Road headed north to the Northwest Radial Highway. This right here happens to be the Cumming Street corridor. This is the Farnham, Harney, and then Leavenworth. We think all of these potential corridors have opportunity for commercial development. And as a result of that, in talking subsequent to this approval, talking with Councilman Festerson, there was a missed opportunity to add this 3-block that's in red. Yeah, and you can see it. And essentially that's between Charles Street and Seward, 50th Street and Northwest Radial Highway. And again, the purpose for the blighting is simply to, again, encourage and incentivize reinvestment, redevelopment within that area, inclusive of that new three-block area, and we ask for your approval.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Can we vote on this one?
Yes,
Mr.
we can.
Clerk? Mr. Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. We talked about Benson. As Bridget mentioned, this is another business district I'm excited about in my area. The North Saddle Creek Road District, think Sergeant Pepper's, Bahomie, and Janus Flores, amongst others. So I was pleased that they helped us readdress this tax increment financing district to take away the idiosyncrasy that would have split right down the middle, but instead captures the whole thing and will help them also move forward and create jobs. So with that, I'd move approval.
Second. No further lights. Roll call.
Thompson?
Yes.
Festerson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Jerem? Mulligan? Stothard? Mr. President?
Yes.
It's adopted 7-0. Item number 42, resolution of the attached piano building, LLC, tax increment financing project plan, proposing a mixed-use commercial development project located at 4900 Dodge Street into ground floor retail space with office above is hereby approved.
Public hearing on item number 42 begins now. Are there any proponents?
Bridget Hadley, Planning Department. I'm here to ask for your approval for the resolution of the Piano Building LLC tax increment financing redevelopment project. This project, as you have already read, is located at 4900 Dodge Street, and this is a renovation conversion of a historic building to commercial office space above and retail on the lower level. And we do ask your support. We believe that the justification is that this is restoring a historic property to fit back into the historic character of the Dundee neighborhood. It brings business investment back into the Dundee area, brings jobs, and it helps to increase the tax base. So we do ask for your approval of this project.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Festerson.
Just a quick question either with Ms. Hadley or Mr. Doherty. So this is a $3 million renovation of the piano building. And it's mixed use in nature, and you anticipate office on top and retail on the bottom?
That is correct. And again, I'm Matt Doherty, the developer, sorry.
And are any tenants you can share with us that you have at this point? Or?
Sure, I'd be honored. The tenants on the main floor is going to be Roman Coin Varsity Pizza. This will be their 4th location in Omaha. And they're typically in Bellevue, Southwest Omaha area now. The other location would be Dr. Bartholet, which is a chiropractor in the Midtown area. I think this retail frontage is called Body in Motion. And then, of course, my State Farm agency in Dundee, Matt Doherty State Farm. And then Prudential Real Estate, Vince Lisi has decided to take another location, make a presence in the Dundee area. So Vince has decided to take space in there. And then DRI Title has decided to add a location with Vince. And so they're going to open a location in that building as well. So we're really excited, obviously, about the opportunity to have this and kind of give back a little bit to Dundee for what they've given us, I guess.
And the parking lot, I was looking at the plan, the parking lot to the north, would that encompasses taking out a couple other properties, right? Is it a duplex there, or is it a house?
Right. We're very sensitive to the neighborhood, and so I'm sure you're aware of what happened with CVS. And so in light of that, we've tried to kind of walk a fine line on that. So what we decided to do was, in light of that, take just one of those duplexes out, and then there's a yard kind of adjacent to that, and so we're going to take some of that yard with that house, and then we're going to kind of double the parking going in there, and then kind of create some like green space within that as well, so that's sort of compromising and it sort of fits the neighborhood, I guess. You know, as you're sure aware, the Dundee neighborhood parking is obviously difficult at best, so you're trying to sort of compromise into that urban development without taking away too much of the neat architecture that's within the area.
And I agree with you. This is different example than the one you cited from across the street. This does maintain the historic character of this building and doesn't expand a huge parking lot, like you mentioned, and I appreciate the green space notion that is important to the neighborhood. And Ms. Halley, did you want to add to that?
Excuse me, Bridget Hadley, Planning Department. I just wanted to add that, of course, the redevelopment plan is subject to all the recommendations from the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals, because we realize there are some zoning board variances in rear yard setbacks and impervious coverage, as well as zoning changes. And this is because it is along an ACI corridor, and we want to make sure that it does comply with the ACI corridor. So we do recommend all the changes that have been requested for the project to fit.
Yeah, I think it's a great project. What's the timeline?
Well, he's told us by November he'd like to have this open and ready for business. All the businesses open. At least the project done, the renovations and the conversion.
Yeah, it's like next week, right?
November 2010, just to clarify, or 2011.
I was going to say I better move approval really quickly here. I will move approval. Thanks for your responses.
Yeah. And we'll try to run this fast too. Help you get there. No further lights. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's adopted 7-0. With no objection, we'll bring up item number 63 next. 63 is resolution. The City Council does hereby authorize .com to proceed with the work described in their request for capital technology funds.
Public hearing on item number 63 begins now. Are there any proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mrs. Stothard.
Thank you. As a member of the .com board, I just wanted to review and just state that this is the first in a series of projects for success that we were all presented, the city and the county were presented several months ago by our CEO, Duffy Boyle. And what these projects are success are for is infrastructure advancement. This particular piece is called a virtual tape system, and it will be used to support the mainframe disaster recovery, which is critical as we go forward with .com. The cost of this will be paid for the total project by lease purchase bonds, and the repayment will be split between the city and the county. And so I ask for your approval.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Second. No further lights. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Mr. President.
Yes.
It's adopted 7-0. Pursuant to City Council, pursuant to City Council Rule 7F, agenda item number 43 should be laid over 3 weeks for publication and public hearing. Item number 44, Metropolitan Entertainment Convention Authority Financial Statement and Independent Audit Report for the years end June 30th, 2010 and 2009.
Do we have a motion to receive and place on file?
Place on file.
Second. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Mr. President.
Yes.
Placed on file 7-0. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, the third reading and public hearing on agenda items 45 through 47 shall be held on December 14th. Pursuant to City Council Rule 7H, the second reading and public hearing on agenda items 48 through 61 shall be held on December 7th.
Motion adjourned.
Second. Roll call.
Thompson.
Yes.
Festerson. Gray.
Yes.
Jerem. Mulligan. Stothard. Mr. President.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving. 3:53.